In the quiet corners of true crime history, some stories lie dormant, waiting for a voice to bring them back into the light. The case of Rochelle Graham is one such story. It's a tale that chills the bone, not just because of the crime itself. This isn't a story of a distant, shadowy figure, but of a threat that lurked in plain sight, a familiar face in a trusting neighborhood. For years, the full narrative remained fragmented, known only to those who lived through the initial terror. The passage of time threatened to erase Rochelle's memory, turning a vibrant young life into a forgotten statistic, a ghost in the city's complex history. In 2020, I had the profound opportunity to speak with Rochelle's mother, Diane Graham. Her voice, filled with a strength that defied decades of grief, entrusted me with a sacred duty: to remember her daughter. She asked me to ensure that Rochelle's story would not be lost to the archives of unsolved mysteries or the fading memories of a community. That conversation became the bedrock of my investigation, a guiding light that has illuminated my path through dusty court records, faded newspaper clippings, the tangled web of a case that once seemed destined for obscurity. The original documentary I produced in 2023, which first brought this story to a new generation, is no longer available online. However, what endures are the raw materials of truth. My personal notes from that deeply moving interview with Diane Graham remain, filled with details and emotions that no official document could ever capture. Alongside these, I have meticulously gathered court records, the source materials, and the investigative files that formed the skeleton of that original story. Now, we will piece them together again, not just to retell a story, but to honor the promise made to a mother, and to seek a deeper understanding of the justice that was so long awaited. Rochelle Graham was a bright 9-year-old girl with a smile that could light up the entire block. Growing up in North Philadelphia in the late 1970s, she was part of a close-knit community where neighbors knew each other by name, and children played freely in the streets and schoolyards. Her mother, Diane Graham, remembers her as a happy girl who found joy in the simple things, a beacon of innocence in a city that was often tough and unforgiving. In every neighborhood, there are familiar faces, individuals who become part of the daily scenery without ever raising suspicion. Kevin Hughes was one of those faces. As a teenager, he had a local gig delivering groceries, a job that gave him a reason to be on everyone's doorstep. He wasn't a stranger, he was the delivery boy, a presence so common that he became almost invisible. This veneer of normalcy was his most effective camouflage. He learned who lived where, who had children, and when people were likely to be home or away. Years before his fateful encounter with Rochelle, there were already deeply disturbing signs. In 1976, an 11-year-old girl reported Kevin Hughes abducted her, forced her into a vacant building and subjected her to a horrific ordeal. Despite the gravity of the 1976 assault, the consequences for Kevin Hughes were shockingly lenient. He was placed on psychiatric probation. This decision allowed him to remain in the very neighborhood where he had already preyed on a child, a catastrophic failure of the justice system. January 5, 1980. A winter day in North Philadelphia. For 9-year-old Rochelle Graham, a day for play. She was last seen in her schoolyard, a place that should have been a sanctuary. Rochelle disappeared from the schoolyard, snatched in broad daylight. One moment she was there, part of the neighborhood rhythm. The next, she was gone. The initial hours brought mounting dread for her mother, Diane. A simple worry quickly escalated into full-blown panic. The search for Rochelle Graham took a horrifying turn when a call came in about a fire. They charged into the smoke-filled structure, training kicking in as they navigated debris-strewn floors. On the second floor, amidst charred remnants, they found a small body. It was Rochelle Graham. Then responders noticed something baffling. Burned into the ceiling were 3 capital letters, P-E-A. A deliberate marking seared into the plaster above the victim. Its meaning was a complete mystery. Fear, thick and palpable, descended upon the neighborhood. Parents held their children closer. For months the clue hung in the air, baffling investigators. They considered local gangs, a phrase, but every path led to a dead end. The police tip line was inundated with calls. They were chasing ghosts, pursuing dozens of leads that ultimately led nowhere. The case was slowly transitioning from an active, high-priority investigation into a frustrating cold case. The trail had gone completely cold, and all hope was nearly lost. Nearly 10 months after Rochelle's murder, the predator resurfaced, the target, another young girl, Marie Oquendo, 13 years old. In a terrifying echo of his previous crimes, he grabbed Marie from behind as she walked the neighborhood. He forced Marie into a vacant house. But this time, something changed. Marie Oquendo survived. She fought back. She resisted. And most importantly, she escaped. Her escape became the turning point. She went straight to the police. She identified her attacker. She gave the police a name. The name she gave was Kevin Hughes, the boy who delivered groceries. Suddenly the phantom had a face. Investigators began to look at Hughes. They started to dig into his background. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was a clear and terrifying pattern of predatory behavior. In the neighborhood, Kevin Hughes was known by a simple nickname. He was called Peanut. The revelation was both stunningly simple and deeply chilling. P-E-A were the first 3 letters of Peanut. The killer had literally signed his work. The Phantom of North Philly was about to be confronted. The mask he had worn for so long was about to be ripped away. Under the pressure of sustained questioning, the mask began to crack. His claims of innocence were crumbling against a mountain of circumstantial and direct evidence. He finally broke. He confessed to the murder of 9-year-old Rochelle Graham, admitting to the crime that had haunted the city for almost a year. The hunt was officially over. The confession brought an end to the long period of tension and uncertainty. Following his confession, the legal proceedings moved forward, the case brought into the public eye of the courtroom. Marie Oquendo's testimony was devastating. She recounted her ordeal and identified Kevin Hughes. Ultimately, the jury delivered the expected verdict. Kevin Hughes was found guilty of murdering Rochelle Graham. The man who stole Rochelle Graham's life would finally be held accountable for his actions. The conviction of Kevin Hughes brought a legal end to the case, but it could not erase the deep scars left on the community. For Diane Graham, the verdict was not a victory, but a somber milestone in a lifetime of grief. Decades after the trial, Diane's focus shifted from seeking justice to preserving memory. She entrusted me with the sacred duty of remembering. By examining the twists, the evidence, and the human cost of this case, we do more than just recount a tragedy. We participate in the act of remembering, ensuring that the unseen evidence is finally brought into the light, and that Rochelle's name and the lessons her story teaches us are never forgotten.